Hey, everybody. All right. Aren't you guys revved up now?
Are we? Are we?
Damn
I'm
it.
pumped.
Hey, everybody. So listen,
Pumped.
this is Jeff, as usual, with Cyberneticshark on the MCU's Bleeding Edge, once again, Wednesday evening, with Arch in the corner on the panel, holding it down. And we've got two new guests, hosts themselves, Kevin and Kyle from the True Believers MCU and Marvel podcast. So, guys, welcome to the MCU's Bleeding Edge. Kyle, Kevin, it's great to see you.
It's good to be here. I don't know, Kevin, you look like you might be a little frozen up over there.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Hey, you know what? Everybody gets frozen once in a while on here. It happens. I was guesting on the
Once
podcast.
in a while?
I was guesting on the
I think it's-
podcast of champions.
I think it's every day.
Yeah, practically. With the other day on Saturday, and I guess I was freezing the whole time. They were telling me after the show, you know. So I feel I can't wait to see the video now of what kind of poses I was probably in. But anyways, this is the MCU's Bleeding Edge, and as always, I want to go ahead and start off by giving my guests an opportunity to just let everybody know about where they're coming from in terms of their content creation, their podcast. Arch, you of course come from the podcast of champions, sakar.freeforums.net. Do you want to go ahead and kind of just shout them out, or explain the whole forum?
Yeah, absolutely. You just gave the website, sakar.freeforums.net. It's a fan forum, just a pretty wide open place where you can discuss anything in the realm of nerddom. We were talking about the MCU and DCU and Star Wars and Star Trek and all kinds of other things. Any gaming, anything you guys are into. It's just a solid group of people, free thought, whatever you think about. You come in and chat what you like about what you like, and we welcome everybody. We do a little show sometimes on Saturdays where we review various topics or shows that have come out, and anybody who's a member of the board is welcome to join us on those as well.
Most definitely. And I myself personally really enjoy guesting on the podcast of champions on Saturdays. It's become like a regular thing for me. We did a really, really solid Marvel Phase 4 kind of like review / recap last Saturday that went down really great. I love how you guys ended up doing it. Arch, didn't Lord Deathman end up, or did you make it into segments?
Yeah, so Deathman is the one who hosts. So if you guys pick up on that, you'll hear his voice hosting. I do most of the production on those particular episodes, and we've got parts 1 and 2 already out on our YouTube channel, but which you can actually find on Sakar. So checking that out, and you can get to those episodes. We've got parts 3, 4, and 5 coming out pretty soon.
Yes, most definitely. Subscribe to the Podcast of Champions YouTube channel, follow their podcast, and join sakar.freeforums.net. I enjoy being on there. Cyber's on there. I don't have much time to go on there really and post and chat and whatnot, but I try to get in here, once in a while and pop on. And there's some interesting, conversations going on there. A lot of Dune talk lately, which I enjoy, So Kevin, Kyle, Kevin, in whatever order, it's really great to have you guys on here. We're really blessed to have you. I've been on your show before one time, and that's how I met you. And would one or both of you please just, kind of delve into the True Believers, MCU, and Marvel podcast and your network?
Well, we are the Fan Podcast Network. Our webpage is fpnet.podbean.com. We're a podcast network. We cover a lot of different fandoms. We have our show True Believers, which is our main MCU show covering everything that's happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we have a few other shows as well. We have a Star Wars show, What a Piece of Junk, covering everything Star Wars. We have a great Highlander show, Blood of Kings, that is covering all things Highlander, including they have a huge con coming up, Highlander Worldwide, that's going to be a virtual con that we just put an episode out previewing that. We've got a whole lot of other things. We've got podcasts covering hair metal. We've got some podcasts just covering general fandom. We have a fun one we like to call Couch Potato Theater, where we talk about those movies that you may have the Blu-ray or the 4K or the VHS or the Laserdisc, but if it pops on cable, you're still going to stop and watch it because you love the movie that much. But, we just try to have a lot of fun with fandom. One of our mottos is always respect each other and enjoy your fandom, and that's what we're all about.
And it's funny too, because like our True Believers podcast kind of came literally at the last minute. WandaVision had just released on that Friday at that time before they moved the Marvel show's new releases to Wednesdays. And I think it was on Saturday, I contacted Kyle saying, hey, we both love Marvel a lot. Maybe we should do a new show with all of this new Marvel stuff that's coming out. And then that's how it was born. And literally like 48 hours later, we had a new podcast.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works around here.
Well, I had an excellent time working with you guys on your show. It was really great. We actually did a Loki review a while back. Seems like forever now, to be honest with you. It's crazy to think that we're going to be jumping into What If here soon. You guys are going to be covering What If here coming up like here
next week.
Yeah, next week. Captain
Next
Carter.
week it starts.
Yeah, what's up with that, Cyber? I just talked to you yesterday, and we were talking about Miss Marvel and Hawkeye, and you didn't tell me that Hawkeye already was released and everything, and it's coming out in October or whatever.
I told you that it had a release date, November 24th, and you just forgot probably.
Okay. It's very possible that I did.
Because we know if you don't write it down, you don't remember, sir.
That's very true. Cyber knows me like a mother, so
that's right, son.
That's right. We've got the MCU's bleeding edge connection. So listen, everybody. I will, of course, by the time this is all said and done, when this show actually comes out and becomes a video version and a podcast version, I'll get information from Kyle and Kevin so I can go ahead and give you guys where to go to follow the podcast. How you guys are on YouTube too, right?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on all the major podcast catchers. If you just search for Fandom Podcast Network, you'll find us.
How does that work? So iTunes is still a viable platform, right? But there is Apple Podcasts at the same time.
Well, yeah, it gets a little confusing because it's Apple Podcasts on Apple devices, but for like people still using Windows and stuff, it's still iTunes.
Oh, that's how it works. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So anyways, well, guess what, everybody? This is actually literally a milestone moment because this is the 5th installment of our Infinity Saga Review Series connected with the Podcast of Champions. And we are doing Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man 2, the live stream review version. And we're going to make this a part 1 and kind of like leave it in the air about potentially doing a part 2 just because it seems like these reviews are taking so long. So, but we'll play it by ear, like worst case scenario, we might end up reviewing Thor next week. We'll see. I guess we'll just see what ends up, coming out of this show tonight. I can think of a worse thing to review than Thor, but luckily you guys aren't here for Captain Marvel. Although I believe, if I remember correctly, you guys are pretty positive on Captain Marvel, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin has the lunchbox right behind him, so I know he liked.
I really enjoyed it.
That's right. You showed me that last time. I forgot about the lunchbox.
I'm a Captain Marvel defender.
That's all. You know what? I ran into a Captain Marvel defender on TikTok the other day. He was very impassioned. He did not like it. I threw up some videos on TikTok from the Critical Drinker giving like a negative review of Captain Marvel on YouTube. And this person got all personal and emotional and everything and was like talking to me on TikTok about Carol Danvers and Brie Larson and this and that and everything. And I'm like, hey, calm down. Like they're just videos that I threw up. Like it's not my opinion.
Well, when the Marvels comes out, I think everybody will have a much different opinion.
I just want to mention too, Kyle and I were just discussing this. We're actually going to be doing our own very own rewatch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But we're going to be doing it in the chronological order, and we're going to drop them in between breaks of the live shows and the new shows coming out in the movies. And so we're going to start with Captain America, and then when we get to Captain Marvel, I'll make sure that we don't call you.
No, you should bring me on for Captain Marvel.
That sounds vaguely familiar, Jeff, doesn't it? Exactly what we're doing.
That was aggressive.
Steelers.
I'm really glad you guys let us know about that, because I want you to make sure that you get me and Cyber to, at least for one or two of those reviews.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Hey, we do this all day. So I mean, if we know the MCU like the back of our hands over here. We don't play. And Arch is pretty good too. He's not bad. He's a good guy to have around.
I try.
He doesn't sound as good as Lord Deathman, but Lord Deathman has the whole audio only deal going on, which kind of makes him stand out. It elevates his voice a little bit more.
I like him. He's enigmatic, and he's got the butter voice thing going on. So he's good. He's solid.
He's so good that the first time you meet him, you want him to host your show, basically, guys.
He's a fantastic host.
If you run into Lord Deathman, Kevin or Kyle, I guarantee you will want him to host one of your shows at some point. He sounds that good. So Iron Man 2, it's a very interesting film. Although Cyber doesn't believe it, I did watch it. I actually watched it more than once, because the first time I watched it, there were a couple of scenes that I kind of, tuned out, for a minute, or was doing something else or whatever. I needed to kind of go back. I feel like, to start off with, I feel like we talked about this before, Cyber, the fact that our expectation is when we do shows, that people who tend to watch us and like us, they follow the MCU. They know the characters. They may not be comic book fans, like a lot of us are, but they understand the premise of the MCU and who the characters are and what's what with the films. Kevin, Kyle, you guys basically both of you have some Marvel comic background, right?
Oh, I grew up on Marvel. First thing I remember reading as a kid is a Spider-Man comic, and especially in the 80s and early 90s, I was a big X-Men fan. But all of it, Avengers, Spider-Man, Hulk, all of it. I was a big into Marvel comics, and really Marvel comics was kind of. I like some DC stuff, but Marvel comics is where it was at for me.
Kyle is the resident comic book guru for when it comes to our podcast. I jumped in more with the movies. When it was comics for me as a kid, I was anti-superhero when I was younger. I was into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original black and white comics. I was into G.I. Joe. Those are the things that I was into when it comes to comics.
Well, that's interesting. I remember that dynamic now from the last time that I was on you guys' show. Honestly, Kevin, for somebody who's as now MCU knowledgeable, you come off like you have a little bit of that comic book vibe going on. You know what I mean? I guess
I've learned a lot from Kyle, and when this new stuff comes out, I do like to do some research before we podcast, and that means going into the comics and watching other people's videos, watching your guys' videos, anything, listening to my peers, basically, that, really know what they're doing, and I give them credit, of course, and because I feel like no matter how old you are, you can always learn. And podcasting with my good buddy Kyle here, I've learned quite a bit about comic history, so I'll always be forever grateful for that.
Isaac, is good to see you, brother. Isaac, one of the nice things about being pretty new and small, I guess, when it comes to being a MCU content creation team, is that we actually name basis, with a lot of the people who come on the show and go in the live stream in the comment section. When they pop up, we know who they are for the most part. So it's a familiarity that I enjoy. And who knows, we may break through and become bigger than we are right now, but so far we're hanging in there around that 50, almost 50 subscriber range on YouTube. We're getting close to it. And Isaac, we appreciate you, brother. It's good to talk to you, man. And we all seem to be doing pretty well on here. We're going to do an Iron Man, 2 review. So I can't think of a more important or interesting thing to talk about really than Iron Man 2. No, I'm just kidding. But of course, as far as Iron Man 2 goes, I want to start off with basically just asking everybody here, what were your feelings? And I'll start with you, Kyle. What were your feelings watching Iron Man 2 whenever you watched it, whether it was a couple weeks ago or, today or yesterday or whatever, compared to when you saw it back in 2010? What are your thoughts and your views on the film now as you see it again?
It's an enjoyable film. I don't know. It's definitely not one of the best of the MCU films. It does have some flaws in it, but I think overall it's just enjoyable. Robert Downey Jr. is magic as always. Obviously, this being the movie that brings us to Black Widow with Natasha Romanoff, and the man who steals this movie for me, Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer, is so much fun. And of course, obviously too, we have the change in roadies as we go from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle, when getting the War Machine armor and things like that. I think for me, looking at it now compared to back then, it's with every Marvel release you had that huge excitement, and when I look at this one now, there's a lot of things I enjoy, but this isn't one that for me is a constant revisit like some of the other MCU films. But it's still a lot of fun, and like I said, Sam Rockwell to me steals this movie as Justin Hammer. He is absolutely amazing in this film.
Well, Kyle basically just explained in one quick, the contribution there. Basically, wrapped up the whole premise as far as the key points of the film, right in that shot. That's the thing about Iron Man 2. It's not Infinity War. There's not 17 different things going on. It's very simple. It's not a complicated film. Although, we'll debate that, I guess, probably over time throughout the review. But Arch, to you, same question. Are you able to go back and kind of remember how you felt about seeing Iron Man back, in 2010?
It's tough for me to remember the very first time I watched it, but I can tell you probably my most rewatched film, at least through Age of Ultron. I would watch Iron Man 2 quite a lot. I don't know. I just found it really enjoyable from start to finish. There's at least for me, there's so many great scenes from the Rockwell scenes of putting the guns together and Rhodey kind of first taking on War Machine and Widow's debut, and there's just the whole thing. It's I feel like it's one of those films, every scene I just want to keep watching it. So I used to rewatch this one quite a lot. I'm sure we'll get into more detail in a minute, but anything else I can contribute for now, or is that what you were going?
What was your go-to for a long time there? Before Ultron, this was your go-to, throw it up to go to sleep or whatever Marvel movie?
It's one of those I watched a lot. I mean, I am a complete MCU apologist. I love all of these films, and I don't make a secret about that. But yeah, that was one that I would watch quite a lot. I'll tell you that. I'm not saying necessarily it was the one I would say was the best or anything like that. There's a lot of great films through Phase 2. I don't need to name them all, but I would watch Iron Man 2 quite a lot.
Age of Ultron was actually that film for me for a while, a couple of years back. Age of Ultron became my go-to MCU film that I would throw up whenever I had to kill time or something. When you would typically put a podcast on, I'd put Age of Ultron on. I actually think it's a very maybe underrated film, to tell you the truth. I think it's actually a pretty good movie.
Absolutely, it's really good.
Oh yeah, and it'll be a lot of fun to review. I mean, that one might be a 3-parter, to be honest with you, because there's a lot to unpack with that film. But Cyber, my friend, I know for a fact, because of your memory is impeccable compared to mine, that you probably can remember what you thought of Iron Man 2 back in 2010. What are your thoughts these days watching it now?
Well, I mean, seeing it back in 2010, I mean, it was state of the art for its time. Just like the first Iron Man. It was a very intense and great film. I mean, it was, pretty much the, third film coming out from the MCU at the time. And basically you were just enthralled. You were enthralled. You're getting more Marvel finally. You're getting more Robert Downey Jr. So when I went and saw it in theaters, I just remember being in awe the whole time just watching it and then coming out of it and just wanting to watch it over and over again because I just thought it was such a great film for that time at 2010. I mean, of course, we've said, as the movies have progressed, they have gotten better and better and better over the years. So, I mean, it's not, like Arch was saying, it's not his, the greatest one at, the best film of all time, but at the same time, it's still a very good film for how early in the phase it was for the MCU. And I just think it's a very easy and watchable film too as well. I watch it all the time as well.
Kevin, what are your thoughts? Did you see the film back in 2010?
Oh yeah, I have seen every single Marvel film theatrically in the theater.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was one of those. This one was, I remember the hype for this one because the original Iron Man was such a huge hit, such a huge surprise, gave us so much hope, you know. And this is before we really realized too that there was this big plan, this big Kevin Feige plan. You know, we weren't thinking phases at this time. You know, we just wanted more Iron Man. And we got it. And it's interesting as time went on, this was always one of those films that, including the third one, that people would just kind of knock down, find any reason to knock down, whether it was, you know, the villain in this, you know, Whiplash and stuff like that. But when I just watched it yesterday to get ready to jump on with you guys here, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I always have. One of the best things about this movie is Justin Hammer, Sam Rockwell, and I was kind of hoping that he would eventually come back, and I think that there's a chance he might, because we need more Sam Rockwell. He was just great in this. But this also too, you know, this is where we get, you know, the new Rhodey. You know, and they were kind of made tongue in cheek about this, like, you know, in the courtroom and the hearing in the beginning. He's like, "It's me, get used to it." You know, it's like basically get used to the new casting.
Great line, perfect line.
But the thing that I really enjoy about the Iron Man films, and one of the things that I really enjoyed about the third one, which a lot of people crap on for other reasons, is I love the relationship between Tony and Pepper Potts as it's starting to develop. I love those two as a couple. I love their banter between each other. It's watching this relationship, kind of being a fly on the wall of this relationship, is like, you know, it's going to happen, but it's going to be a rocky road getting there. And that's half the fun in watching that. And those two have wonderful, wonderful chemistry. And also too, I got to give a shout out to the first appearance of Black Widow. Still my favorite look with the long curly red hair. Oh my God, hot.
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I could not help but notice how youthful she looks in that film. I mean, she does look a lot younger than she does in the Black Widow film.
Excuse me, sir. Do you mind exiting the donut? Every time I drive past Randy's Donuts on the freeway, I always get a kick out of that scene.
Yeah. All I want to know is, can I have one of those?
I mean, look, I think she looks. I mean, you know, I don't want any like crazy feminists or like whatever to come out and like start coming after me or whatever because I talked about ScarJo aging or whatever during the Black Widow film. Like, she's getting older. It is what it is. She's still beautiful as hell. Like, what are you kidding me? I mean, she's extremely attractive. But I could not help but notice that in Iron Man 2, she looks young. Like, I mean, you can really tell that it was like 11 years ago or whatever, you know, when this film came out, you know, or 12 or 13 when it was made. What were you going to say, Arch?
No, I was going to tell a small Randy's Donut story. So I'm from Florida, and I'm just going to break the reality a little bit for some people here. I was out in LA one time, and I was like, oh, I can drive past Randy's Donuts. So I actually went to the actual donut store with the filming location. I got a picture of it. And I was crushed to realize there was not an inside seating area. So the entire seating scene is done somewhere else somehow. But like, I was like, I walked around that building like 18 times.
Yeah, that's a stand up to the counter, grab your donuts and go place.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I haven't been to the donut shop or anything like that in a while. It's actually been a minute now that I think about it. But that we'll talk about that scene later on when we get into the secondary characters of the film and what our thoughts are on, like, you know, Nick Fury's presence and everything and whatnot. But does anybody have anything to conclude kind of when it comes to like this premise of what it was like before Kevin Feige's master plan type deal was set in place, and we started to look at things in phases and everything, and things were a little bit more narrowed. And like, you know, Iron Man was like the fundamental character not that he's didn't remain that, but like at that point he was the show. Go
Well,
ahead.
Iron Man 2 really kind of let us know, like, oh no, Coulson's going to New Mexico. Why? And then we get that stinger at the end going, oh, whoa, we're going to get more like superheroes now. That was like the wake up call was at the end of that film. You know, when you hear him say, I've been reassigned, I'm going to New Mexico, you're like, okay, what's going on there? And then we see Mjolnir, or, you know, if you're Darcy, Mew Mew.
I just remember at this time I was still very much in the, all right, they got to get Thor right next. Let's just take it easy. Nobody get too excited. All right, now they got to get Captain America right. All right, everybody's like, just make sure they get that. And then you knew Avengers was coming at this point. You didn't realize what they were going to reveal in that film, but I was still like, all right, let's make sure they get this right. Let's make sure they do that one right, and they did ultimately. But that's how I was feeling.
And I think that's a good point. I think everybody was still like, it looks like it's happening. It feels like it's happening, but we're not quite there yet. We're not quite. I truly think most people didn't feel that way until we actually got to the end of Captain America, or even got that after that, when Avengers actually pops up on the screen after the opening scene of Avengers.
But from a fan standpoint, I don't know this for a fact, but didn't people already realize? Weren't there already rumors that the Avengers was going to happen when Iron Man?
Yeah. Avengers was already well known that it was coming, but it was still, people were like, yeah, well, let's do it, because we hadn't gotten past the two films that most people saw as the biggest hurdles to get to Avengers, and that's pulling off Thor and Captain America. And I think in each of their own ways, they handled what could have been real awkward situations for those films brilliantly.
And well, of course, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility put in place when it comes to, you know, everybody involved in producing these films, from the Marvel Studios end to the actors and actresses themselves. I think it's definitely something that we're definitely going to end up getting into more, and that is the fact that it was the reveal of the Black Widow. That's really weird. Sorry about that, guys. I guess I shouldn't probably keep my cell phone in my pocket during the podcast, live stream. I was actually just sitting here, and all of a sudden this like weird like song creeped out of my pocket or whatever, and I'm like, what the hell is that? It's interesting how technology is sometimes. But anyways, so back to what I was saying, as far as the Black Widow being revealed in this film, for me, I can remember looking back and feeling like that was really a part for me that made it more realistic and tangible, that they were putting together like an actual cinematic universe. Even though, I mean, honestly, it's hard to remember looking back that directly. I was a really busy person at that point, between work and kids and everything and whatnot. Back then I had custody of my daughter and everything and whatnot. It was like a lifetime ago. But I really enjoyed watching the film and seeing the Black Widow in the film. And what I wanted to ask you guys next was actually, what stands out to you in, I guess, probably like the first half of the film? Because I look at Iron Man 2 as basically like two halves almost. You know, I guess you could make it into three parts if you wanted to, but it's like two halves. What stands out to you guys? Cyber, you first. In the first half of the film, that arc of the film, what pops off?
What pops off? I mean, you get your introduction to Whiplash at the beginning of the film. You get your first look of his first, building of his, machine, basically, his whips and stuff like that. So we get to see his first take on that. We get to see kind of Tony's slow decline, because he's dealing with the palladium basically disintegrating inside his body and causing him to have issues. And so he's trying to figure out a solution for that. And then, you kind of have like this kind of slow burn of just all those things mashing together, and Tony having to figure things out while, others are really worried about him. I think that's pretty much what I feel is like the first half of the film, kind of what kind of goes on and kind of what they're dealing with, until we get to the second portion of the film.
do you feel like it's appropriate to break the film down into two parts? Is that like how do you see it like that yourself?
Well, if you're gonna do 2-part film, yeah, I would break it down in half.
Okay, that makes sense, brother. I appreciate that. Um, so Kevin, for you, like, I mean, we can always, I can always ask you something else, but is there anything in the first half of the film that really like stands out to you that you found that was pivotal to you, or that you recollect, or like you remember?
Yeah, he's dealing with. So he came to a point at the end of Iron Man. Is he going to be quiet about this, or is he going to be Tony and come out about this? And he came out, said he was Iron Man. So he's dealing with his even more new celebrity instead of being this playboy, son of a weapon manufacturer. And he's being called out to a Senate hearing, but he's able to back up his actions. And that whole thing kind of leads to the whole thing with Rhodey and this competitive thing that's going on with Justin Hammer. And then the government wanting, obviously, his weapon or another version of it, which they do get in a back way with Rhodey. And so all of that, to me, I found very fascinating, of course. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the relationship and turning his company over to Pepper and while he's also dealing, as you guys just mentioned, the thing about, the poisoning that he's going through as soon to be Visions would say, saying that what's keeping you alive is also killing you,
Yes, and that's a great point. I actually really I really paid attention and enjoyed the Paul Bettany as Jarvis. Facet of the film, because that was something that actually stood out to me, because I think of him as Vision all the time. So like it was interesting and kind of weird to like see him as Jarvis, again. But Kyle, what about you? Anything really for you that really stood out in the first half of the film?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think the point of finding Tony in the donut is really a great breaking point of this film in the two halves, because you end with him kind of having that crazy birthday party and things not going well with Rhodey, and then Fury finding him, and we kind of head in the next different direction. But when I look at the first half of this film, there's a few key points that stand out. First and foremost, the suitcase armor. Getting that portable suitcase armor, which was actually the main poster for the Iron Man film, just using the classic trope of the Iron Man, of Tony storing the Iron Man suit in a suitcase. That whole thing was excellent. And also just the flamboyance of Tony with the introduction and the opening at Stark Expo, which I want to bring to a, because that was the first time I truly remember something it's one of the first films that started this. There was a scene in the trailer that actually didn't make the movie, because in the trailer we see Tony ask for a kiss, and Pepper kisses the Iron Man helmet and then throws it out the plane, and Tony takes off and catches it and then lands at Stark Expo. Well, they cut that out of the film when it actually hit in the theater, and I never understood why, because it was a great scene between those two. So that started a trend of that happening a lot for a while, where there were scenes in the trailer that weren't actually in the film. And I think the other thing with this was, everything with Justin Hammer. I mean, just you see where he's so wants to be Tony Stark. He thinks it, and in his own ego, he's an equal match to Tony Stark. But you see how Tony just treats him as so completely secondary, just a wash off. And then, just how that kind of plays out. And of course, too, the early introduction of Gary Shandling and what he means to the future of the MCU as well.
Thank you for mentioning Gary Shandling. Go ahead, Kevin.
I just want to mention real quick, Kyle brought up the suitcase armor. One of my favorite Iron Man suits. And if you're in Las Vegas, go to I think it's Treasure Island. They have this Avengers Station kind of walk-through museum event that you can go to, and they have all of the main Iron Man suits, including the Mark I that he built in that desert prison. But they have the suitcase version that's up there. I've always loved that one. I just thought it was the coolest thing.
Arch, and then we're going to jump in and go do the Iron Man trailers. Now that Kyle going ahead and mentioned it reminded me. Arch, for you, what in the first half of the film kind of stands out?
Yeah, I've kind of been itching here because I have a slightly different view of this film. Like I've always looked at this one as this interesting sort of like dovetail plot. Right after the suitcase scene, we get like what I thought was a really cool scene of Tony visiting Ivan in prison, and they have this little talk. For Tony at that point, he thinks the movie's over. He feels he's vanquished this guy who just showed up and everything's good. And from then on, it really becomes two stories. Like there's Tony's having problems with his health, and he's having a relationship with Pepper and her becoming CEO and all this good stuff, and then and dealing with Shield. This is our first kind of proper introduction to Shield, who comes along on that side too, which I thought was great. But then on the other side, you've got this really cool interplay with two villains who are trying to like one up each other. Justin Hammer thinks he's in control half the time, which is really it's just amusing for the most part, which is great. But really, Ivan is just completely playing him like through this entire thing, and you see that eventually come to a head at the end. But I thought it was great. Ivan too. I just want to say, because I there's a big thing, and I just want to acknowledge that a fair amount of people, I don't know how many, I don't want to over exaggerate it, but look at him as not a particularly great villain, but I find him really fascinating. Actually, the film opens up with him having to deal with the death of his dad, which I thought was like a pretty powerful scene, and you see through the opening credits that he had a hand in some kind of project dealing with the Starks and working with Howard and that kind of thing, and you feel he has this legacy that Tony is living out, but Ivan's not allowed to, and he has this bitterness and this resentment at not being able to be what Tony is. And he's had to grow up with these like street toughs instead. So he's like the dark Tony Stark, which I think is sort of like a really fascinating sort of character for him. But I don't know. You get a number of different things here. You mentioned the opening scene just a minute ago, which I thought was great. Jumping down, there's the cheerleaders. It's ridiculously over the top. But you do get that moment after that. You see Howard really properly for the first time speaking. It's on a video, and it's from the past, but he's introducing everybody to the Stark Expo, and that kind of sets up the later scene. And I don't want to get too much to the end here of Tony sort of having this reconciliation with his father. It's not quite the one we'd eventually see in Endgame, but he has this moment where he sort of comes to peace with his relationship with his father, but that was set up at the beginning. So all of that really, like, I felt all of that. I really did. I find all of that really fascinating throughout this film.
Does anybody want to jump in after hearing what Arch had to say by any chance?
Yeah, I think Arch brings up a good point, and we haven't really talked about Vanko too much yet, because I think that's its own separate discussion. Because I think he is kind of what Arch said. He's one of the villains that really splits people in the Marvel universe. Because if anybody's going to have a knock on the MCU as a whole, I think it's been how they've handled villains, and I think Vanko is a very interesting thing, especially with Mickey Rourke in the role. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think Arch brought up a really good point about him and just how he's used within this movie.
Well, I think that's interesting that you mentioned that Mickey Rourke himself and that character, because from what I understand, there was some controversy with him after the film came out. He wasn't too happy with Marvel. I'm not an expert on that whole, affair or whatever, but I just want to point out that there was some bad blood between him and Marvel Studios. Basically, I feel like I love Mickey Rourke. And Kyle mentioned to me in a conversation earlier today that at that time in 2009, 2010, Mickey Rourke was on a high. He had just been nominated for an Oscar, and he was definitely in demand. So I feel like it was good casting. And for me, as a fan, I really like Whiplash, even though he's not the comic book Whiplash. I like what Mickey Rourke did with the character. I feel like they could have maybe given. I feel like it's hard to try to second guess this stuff now. But I feel like if they had developed his story more as a villain and as a character, he might have been more impactful in the film potentially. But guys, I'm going to jump over here to David R. in the comment section. I'm always amazed by Hammer having any contrast after watching all of his equipment fail repeatedly. Yeah, I found that to be very amusing. The fact that like Hammer's like Cuban, his Cuban or whatever, like just tanks at the end, like it doesn't even work, it just fizzles out. Like that was pretty pathetic. And we've also got the F1 fight is a great villain intro. It is. Still not sure why nobody shot him, given the obvious exposed targets, but the driving, the suitcase suit, the extreme slashes, great build. Yes, great comment, David. I really did enjoy that intro. And before I go to the trailers, does anybody want to pitch in on whatever you may think of Vanko as a villain overall in the film? I feel like the way they introduced him during the F1 race was actually great. It looked good. He looked good with the whips and everything and whatnot. I liked his suit. Like, he looked pretty fearsome.
Yeah. Did I answer David about why nobody shot him? I think they kind of established that there's some kind of field around him when he had the whips activated that was protecting him somewhat from being shot and things like that. It's a great introduction to a villain. And I think this is one of those things this is where Iron Man 2 kind of suffers a little bit, and because it kind of fell into what at the time was the big comic book trap. I call it the either the Batman Returns trap or the Spider-Man 3 trap. They're trying to have too many characters in one film, and obviously they perfected it now when we look at like Endgame and Infinity War and things. But at that time, especially when you're still trying to develop the world and everything with it, I just think they were trying to juggle too many pieces, and so. Where Sam Rockwell, his personality just is so overpowering with just the charisma he kind of has, even if it's that slimy, jerky used car salesman charisma. Where with Mickey Rourke and how he plays Vanko up, it just doesn't seem to grab and pull you in as appealing and as interesting. It's an interesting story, but the character himself doesn't necessarily pull you in. And then you add in the fact that they're still working it with Tony, things with Pepper, things with Black Widow, and it was overabundance at that time for that movie, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of feel like things get a little lost in that film because there's so much going on.
I think we got enough with Ivan Vanko's backstory with the father, and we got his side, and then we've got Shield's side. When they brought it up to Tony and what Tony's father ended up having to do. And I thought it was a great introduction for him to start wreaking havoc, because that Formula One race in Monaco is a big deal. It's like if they were to do something here in the States and then do it at like a World Series game or the Super Bowl, because that, racers and rich people come from all around the world, and that race is a big deal. And so I thought it was a great way to introduce him, and I just love seeing those cars get sliced up, and then of course the introduction of the suitcase suit. I just love that.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and not to like vehemently disagree, but like I just really feel like they did like a lot with his character. That wasn't not like a ton, but like I thought they did a solid job of like building up why he's there and why he's so angry. And I
Kyle, I honestly, Arch, I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to put in, I agree with Kyle that like Mickey Rourke didn't sell it. He didn't sell the character to me.
Man, I don't know. I felt like he was really vicious. And I realize I might be in the minority here, but I felt like he was super vicious. Like, when he's cutting up cars, complete disregard for like these like innocent drivers, like just rolling over and getting in horrific car wrecks. Like he's like hanging security guards at the end. Who knows what he did to them exactly? Like he's cracking the necks of guys, and he blows up the dude in the prison cell. Like he's vicious throughout this entire movie. I really felt all that, and I felt Rourke, at least for me, like Rourke really sold all that. So I don't know. That's all I can say.
I enjoyed him in the film. Like I'm kind of wishy-washy with him in the movie, because I did enjoy him. I like Mickey Rourke. I just like I like him in general. I like his voice. I like his whole presence. I like how he looks. So I mean, but at the same time, I feel like the way that things end is kind of like uneventful to me. Like with him, like as a villain, like. It's not all that impactful. When we get to the final, showdown and everything and whatnot. Like, but we can of course get into that in a minute. Let me go ahead and drop these trailers, and we'll kind of just detour really quick, and then we'll get back into things.
Could we pick up now where we left off? Mr. Stark, please.
Yes, dear.
Could I have your attention?
Absolutely.
Our priority here is to have you turn over the Iron Man weapon to the American people.
Well, you can forget it.
We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor.
I have successfully privatized world peace.
We're adjourned for the day. You've been a delight.
Okay, give me a smooch for good luck. I might not make it back.
Go get him, boss.
You complete me.
Oh, it's good to be back.
You come from a family of thieves and butchers. And now, like all guilty men, you try to rewrite your own history. And you forget all the lives the Stark family has destroyed. There will be blood in the water, and the sharks will come.
Center.
I'm sorry, he's very eccentric.
I want one.
No.
If you can make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. And there will be blood in the water. And the sharks will come. All I have to do is sit here and watch as the world will consume you.
Our priority is to get the Iron Man weapon turned over to the United States of America.
I am Iron Man. The suit and I are one. Contrary to popular belief, I know exactly what I'm doing.
What?
What I saw you do to Tony Stark on that track, wow. You need my resources. I want to make Iron Man look like an antique.
This whole lone gunslinger act's unnecessary. You don't have to do this alone.
I hope you're ready.
Come on!
Mr. Stark displays textbook narcissism. Agreed?
Yeah, the suitcase suit was awesome. No question about it. It looked really.
I wish they
cool.
would have left in that scene with Pepper on the plane kissing the mask and throwing it out. And he's like, "You complete me."
Yeah, it was good. It was a good scene. I'm glad that Kyle set that up and whatnot before we actually got the trailers, because I'd forgotten about that completely. And honestly, from watching the trailers, if I had never watched Iron Man 2, I would think that Mickey Rourke as a villain was awesome.
He was
on the trailers. You know what I think it maybe is, Arch? I think maybe I just like my expectations are so high with Marvel Studios at this point that my lens when it comes to looking at these older MCU films is a little bit askew to where I also kind of have high expectations of Mickey Rourke.
Right.
Where, like, he just didn't, for me, deliver to the level where, hey, look, like, he's not he's not Thanos. But either way,
I was just being exaggerated.
What's everybody think about the trailers? Cyber, what do you think? How long has it been since you saw those trailers?
Since 2010. Unlike some people, Jeff, that rewatch certain trailers a billion times, I only watched those back in 2010 when they first came out. I saw both of those trailers. I remember both. And I remember seeing the kiss on the helmet scene as well, and thinking, why wasn't that in the film when I actually saw it in the theaters? And when they finally released it on, of course, Blu-ray, DVD, and so forth, they had it in the deleted scenes. I'm like, oh, there it is. They should, let's do a Favreau cut and let's add it back into the film. So I mean, from those trailers, I mean, it got you going, especially that first one with the music from AC/DC. I mean, that right there alone got me pumped for this film when I first saw those first two trailers. And it just, like, I don't know, it was very exciting because, like we were saying, this is so early beginning of the MCU before Feige was even part of it. Paramount had distribution rights to this and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was the early stages. So a lot of these films, these first films were so weird looking kind of because they're so not formulaic to what the MCU has become. We look at these and we kind of go, oh, this is so different. But at the same time, they've served their purpose at the time and were really well done films altogether.
And Feige was around then. He just wasn't as pivotal, I guess. He wasn't. He hadn't reached his status yet at Marvel Studios, but he was there because he was there back during the Sam Raimi Spider-Man days. Yeah. Kevin Feige was there. So anybody else on the trailers?
Yeah, I was reminded of something when you were talking about the soundtrack there. First of all, I totally forgot about those trailers. I haven't watched those in forever. And when you brought up the Pepper kissing the mask scene, I totally don't remember watching that until way back in those days when we first saw them. But the soundtrack, it's funny. I'm a big AC/DC fan, big heavy metal fan as well. And AC/DC has never officially released a best of album or greatest hits. That's not their thing. They don't do that. The closest thing you will get to an AC/DC greatest hits is the Iron Man 2 soundtrack. And I bought it for that reason because there's some great AC/DC songs on there.
Yeah, you can't not take into consideration AC/DC when you think of Iron Man. Even in the Avengers, right? I mean, don't we get AC/DC like twice in the Avengers or something?
Yeah.
Like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anybody on the trailer?
Yeah, no. Well, let's talk about the biggest thing in this trailer that at the time when this trailer hit had everybody buzzing. War Machine.
Yeah.
Everybody was losing their mind saying, oh crap, we got War Machine. We were teased with it in Iron Man 1, and now we see the full armor of War Machine, and it looked spectacular. It looked just like it was pulled right from the comic books, and people were losing their minds over seeing the War Machine armor in these trailers.
This one's called the ex-wife.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you, Jeff, what you talked about with how they presented Venko in the trailers, and I think that's where the difference for me lies is, while Venko was incredibly vicious, I don't think he ever felt like he was a true threat to Tony Stark. it was like as soon as Stark put out the armor on, he was just going to outclass Venko. That's how it kind of felt like to me. And that's kind of, I think there was something, they made him vicious. They made him frightening to the average person, but he never felt like this is not a heavy hitter who can stand toe to toe with Tony Stark. And even though with the history and everything, there was something about it. And I guess maybe because you were also dealing, and I think part of it might've been dealing with the whole palladium poisoning issue, which seemed like much more of a threat to Tony Stark than Venko ever did.
I feel like the Winter Soldier felt to me like more of a viable threat. You know what I mean? I mean, to anybody basically as a villain. Like, let's be honest here. Like, I'm sorry, but Bucky as Winter Soldier is like on a different level as a villain than Venko. Like, we're gonna get into this when we do the review, of course. But for me, I think that one of the most undervalued villains or underrated villains in the MCU history is the Winter Soldier from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think he's a major component of what makes that, for a lot of people, their number 1, 2, or 3 ranked MCU film in the MCU. You know, and I'm one of those people. It's hard for me to remember whether it's 1, 2, or 3 because they reshuffle in my head. But Arch, did you watch the Iron Man trailer since you already saw him before anyway?
Oh yeah, I definitely watch these. That's little fact. I don't watch newer trailers, but yeah, I watch these. It's weird to me looking back on these in retrospect because you kind of feel like they're giving away the whole movie, sort of, but only because you've already seen it all, so you know exactly where all this happens. But yeah, no, I think they're exciting. I don't remember them when they first came out. There's a few trailers I watch, and I've watched consistently. The Infinity War trailer, I'll still watch that every now and then just because it was incredible.
Man. That up, man. Cyber knows how much I love that trailer.
There's several that are really good. The first Black Panther trailer was really good. I'll still watch the Age of Ultron teaser trailer, the one where they're singing the Pinocchio rhyme and like really slowly, creepily, that kind of thing. Like, there's been a few throughout that I'll watch a lot, but these weren't one of them. Not that they're bad trailers, but I just haven't seen them in a long time.
I contend to this day that I think Infinity War trailer 2 is the best, maybe the best trailer I've ever seen. Out of any trailer I've ever seen, I think it might be the best.
It's very possible. I didn't watch that one until after the film, of course, per my usual. But the first one was amazing. I thought the first one was
with Thanos, and he's like, "I hope they remember you." And you see Tony like with his armor half off and everything, destroyed and everything, and then you see Cap take on Thanos, like, you know, and like hold up Thanos' arm or whatever. Man, you want to talk about like getting you pumped and like excited to see a film? I was freaking stoked. I remember seeing that trailer and being like blown away, and I still am.
I think you and the trailer should get a room.
I love it. I can't get in. It doesn't matter how many years go by. I love the energy of seeing people's reactions to that trailer. It just had an effect on people. But anyways, so guys, moving on as far as the Iron Man 2 review, past the trailers, when it comes to like the secondary characters, the cast, what was everybody's take on that angle of the film? What stood out? What's a major premise for you? Who did you like? Who did you not like? We already talked about Venko. Arch.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some things that jumped off the top of my head there. I liked everybody, but I thought they did a really good job getting Rhodey to War Machine. Like, it felt organic, right? Like, he didn't just jump in the thing for no reason. I liked it. Like, it was he only got in there because Tony was drunk and they needed to do something, and he knows Tony's having like this midlife crisis. They don't know what's going on with him at that point. They don't know his life's threatened. But I like how they got him into the armor versus, I don't know, some sort of generic, hey, I really need you in this kind of thing. I like how it was sort of like an accidental thing. I like how he takes it immediately and gets it souped up. That whole scene was great. Pepper was really awesome here. She sort of levels up as a character a bit, just taking control, especially towards the end where she's kind of so fed up with Tony. She's like, just get out of here and let me run the company. Like, she was reluctant to do so, especially in the first movie. You wouldn't have thought she was doing that, but she's always been in sort of that role anyway. And by the end of the movie, she's really comfortable doing it. I thought it was a great debut for Widow, and I mentioned earlier, but just getting us familiar with S.H.I.E.L.D. This was really the most you'd seen them at the time, which is another reason I really loved this film for a long period of time. We saw a ton of S.H.I.E.L.D. in here, and I thought, from Fury to Coulson, to all these guys. They were all great. So seeing Widow do that was pretty solid. All of those.
That's an important point, Arch. It really is, because like that infrastructure of establishing Shield like that is a component that became very pivotal for the Avengers. It really did. It segued.
This is still probably the movie that they have the most Shield in, other than Agents of Shield, depending on how canon you want to hold that. But this is still probably the most Shield you've seen in any of their movies, which I thought was a fantastic part of it.
Okay. What do you think, Kevin? Secondary characters, the cast, the casting.
There's a lot of returning characters that lended to the continuity of the Iron Man story overall. Yes, you can talk Rhodey and then we got Happy, of course. Of course, you know, Jon Favreau's directing the film, but it's good that he's there. But I also like the fact that you got Leslie Bibb, who played Christine Everhart, back into this one. And there's that great line where they're in Monaco and she's there like interviewing Hammer and Pepper, who's just like has the great line going, oh yeah, you know, she did a spread for Tony, and then Tony's like, oh yeah, and there was an interview in there as well. You know, and so I like that kind of continuity with these characters that lets you know that this is all one big thing. And I got a huge crush on Kate Mara as the U.S. Marshal that served the subpoena. I just gotta say,
that was Kate Mara myself when I watched Iron Man 2, and I didn't remember that, and I was like,
yeah, I loved her in Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. She was just really good in that, and I just love the fact that the interaction there was like how Tony doesn't like being handed things and stuff like that.
I just reviewed a movie she was in called Stowaway or something on Netflix. It was like a sci-fi star, like space kind of movie. And it was very interesting, very serious, very dramatic, but like chilling a little bit. But anyways, so moving on, Cyber, how about you? What do you think in terms of the secondary characters? Is there anything that stands out to you or that you really personally kind of enjoyed?
Well, I mean, like they were saying, what everyone else has said, you know, we have a lot of secondary characters that we met in the first film that returned in this one. We have the introduction of some new characters. The first, you know, of course, look at, you know, Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, played by Scarlett Johansson. And, you know, just like they were saying before, I feel this was definitely her best hairdo in the film, too, as well.
Oh, yeah.
That long, curly red hair was amazing. And then, you know, of course, you know, Ivanko, we were talking about him earlier. He was really good. Mickey Rourke, he did a good job, I thought, as well. I mean, yes, he wasn't the most, you know, craziest villain I've seen in the MCU, but definitely I thought he did the part for what he needed to do for at this point in the MCU. And then, you know, of course, we got, just like Arch was saying about, we got a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. interaction in this film. We got Coulson, we got Fury, you know, that came into this film, which, don't forget, we had a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Winter Soldier as well. We got to see a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. in that film as well, along with Civil War. But at the same time, yes, at the time, yeah, that was the most we had seen of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. And that was just really fantastic because we got Nick Fury in it. And, you know, who doesn't want to watch Samuel L. Jackson in the film? I'll watch him in anything. It could be the worst movie in the world. I'll still watch him because I think he's fantastic. Snakes on a Plane. Anyway, so, you know, it's one of those, you know, movies that just has a really great cast anyways. I mean, yeah, the Leslie Bibb thing was fun. I think it's hilarious that they had her interviewing Justin Hammer because Leslie Bibb and Sam are actually dating in real life. They're actually been a couple for many years now. I don't know how many of you knew that, but they actually are together in real life and have a kid. I think that was funny.
Get that, man. Good for him, Cyber.
And I think it's funny that they had them together, like in the film. They're kind of together, like, you know, Leslie Bibb and Tony were in the first film, but at the same time they were actually dating at the time, which I think was really funny. And then, you know, of course, I just thought that just the whole cast and all together, like, I love that they brought, you know, Jon Favreau decided to bring himself back in to be Happy Hogan again, and we got some good interaction with him, especially when he's sparring with Black Widow. That was hilarious. It was so funny, and he he like gets knocked out right away, and that was like super hilarious. And then when he's trying to take out that one guard, and she takes out all the other guards, and that was just a really great scene too with him. So everyone was just really fun in this film. I thought it was a really well-rounded cast, and I believe all of it just really stood out to me because it was such a great film for its time.
And of course, they upgraded the Rhodey role by bringing Don Cheadle in. As far as I'm concerned,
big upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Kyle? I mean, it's an upgrade to me.
Oh, it's an absolutely huge upgrade. Terrence Howard making the biggest mistake maybe in the history of Hollywood, but we talk about it, and I think it's one of the main reasons the MCU has become what it is, and that is because Marvel bats at least 900 when it comes to their casting. I know there's some casting that's people might question about, but to me, Marvel casting nails it better than any other group of movies out there as far as finding the right people for the right roles. Iron Man 2 is no different with getting Scarlett to play Black Widow. You know what? I'm not even a huge Gwyneth Paltrow fan, but I love her in the Iron Man movies. I think she's incredibly hot in the Iron Man movies when I thought she was very average. For whatever reason, I might be the red hair. I'm a little bit of a weakness for that red hair kryptonite kind of thing. By the way, as much as I love Black Widow in this, I do think her best look was Winter Soldier. That's just my personal preference. But I mean, yeah, I think it's Favreau's best performance is Happy Hogan. I love this. I love it when he's driving to get the suitcase to Tony. That's great, and his interactions with Natasha in this film were great. Obviously, I've raved about Sam Rockwell throughout this show. Even Mickey Rourke, like I said, they were riding high on Mickey Rourke at the time, and to get him was a huge deal for Marvel. But they cast the small roles so well. Even like I said, Leslie Bibb, having Kate Mara be the server. Let's not forget Olivia Munn, who was at that time the queen of geekdom. Let's just say it. She even has a role in this film as well. And of course, we also do technically, if you go by what Kevin Feige says, it is the first appearance of Peter Parker. So we've got that too.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that whole angle. And it is Sarah Finn that's been doing the casting for the MCU now for what, 13 years or 14 years or whatever.
Give that woman a big raise.
Yeah, she does an excellent job. I think she's been spot on the majority of the time when she's made her choices. From David R. in the comment section, Whiplash straight up says he was attacking to wound God, not to kill him. His goal was only to demonstrate that he wasn't infallible, so his success metric is much lower than most villains. Yeah, I get that, David. I do. I that's tangible. Like, I get what you're saying with that. I think that that's very possible. He was really kind of toying with Tony, like playing like mind games with him and everything like that and whatnot. They were trying to play that off. That, like Arch was talking about, that whole dynamic where there was like a like connection between them, where he was kind of, Whiplash was kind of like the like screwed up version of Tony or whatever, you know what I mean, or however you want to pronounce it. But also from David R., this was the Black Widow build film. They went from honeypot to room clearing badass in the course of the film. The comparison to Happy fighting one guy was great. Yeah, that was really great when Happy fights the one guy and Black Widow fights like what, 13 or 14 different dudes or whatever. That was a good scene, really good scene. Does anybody want to point out anything or bring anything to the table in terms of Black Widow in this film? Like that scene where she fights all the guys in the hallway and everything and whatnot.
This is where we get the introduction to her famous, leg scissor kick thing takedown. I forget what I think it's her stunt double calls it, but her traditional takedown with the legs and using that momentum and physics to take down a much larger adversary with that. And that was a great introduction. And her using all the little tools that she has as well,
The gadgets, yes.
Yeah.
And the mace in the face.
Black Widow comic-esque.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe nobody's mentioned the Stan Lee cameo in this.
No, that's
Stan
right.
Lee cameo where he thinks he's supposed to be Larry King.
Oh yeah, Larry King. That's right.
King,
Yeah, Larry
well,
King.
But I mean, come on, let's if we're talking Black Widow, obviously the introduction of the Black Widow pose. I think I'm going to go puke now, but
What's with that's when you flip the hair back?
Yeah.
And the fighting.
But no, yeah, no, go ahead, Jeff.
No, that's all I was gonna say is this was our first shot of the fighting stance, the like landing fighting stance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think knowing what we had, knowing we were already going to get more Black Widow and Avengers when this came out, but I mean, I think it was a great introduction for the Natasha Romanoff character. I know a lot of people kind of talk about the honeypot, but I think they even started developing her beyond that in this film. So, but I think that you had to play up a little bit of that honeypot angle just because of her trying to be undercover working with Tony Stark.
Well, there was that kind of interesting scene where Tony's vulnerable and everything, like he's dying and everything, and she says to him, like, if it was me and it was my birthday, I would do with whoever I wanted to, with whatever I wanted, to do or whatever. And she's like staring right at him and everything and whatnot. And it was pretty provocative, I thought, to be honest with you. I don't know what you guys thought, but I mean, they were going in that direction, Arch.
It definitely was, but like that's part of what her character is. Like this film is probably the most spy you see her be. Like she's also that way at the very, like her opening scene of Avengers is her being a spy, but a lot after that is mostly her being a badass. So I think it's really cool to see her just infiltrating and playing a role and playing a character and doing what she needs to accomplish her goal. But I actually think probably her coming out scene was a little more subtle, where it's actually Pepper starts off and she's questioning Hammer, and then Black Widow just comes in and she's like, all right, enough of this, and like throws Hammer down over the table and was like, all right, we're dealing with this. And then that's where she heads off to whatever Hammer headquarters, whatever his lab is, and takes care of business. But that scene where she just comes in and throws him down was really cool, and she just takes over from there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been rumors for a while back that they were potentially going to bring Justin Hammer back into the MCU. How that would play out, I don't know. I mean, he's really not. It would make no sense to put him on the Thunderbolts or anything like that, because he's not like an actual. He's like more of a backer than he is like an actual villain.
They still might. Armor Wars is a good place for him if they're going to throw him in there. Exactly. I don't know if they will, but yeah, they might.
Am I the only one who kind of wishes that instead of Armor Wars, they would just give us like all of the like footage of like Rhodey as War Machine fighting terrorism and like doing stuff for the government over the years?
He needs to be the power broker. That's who Hammer needs to be, or the person that Sharon Carter was talking to at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier.
You know what, Kevin? They should have made Hammer the power broker, because like that would have been a lot more eventful than the whole Sharon Carter being the power broker deal.
I still think there's something, not to get off on a tangent too much, but I still think there's something going on with Sharon. Like, I've got two ideas on this. Either she's going to wind up playing a pretty big role in like Armor Wars, or perhaps she's going to wind up being a Skrull in Secret Invasion or something. I don't know.
Potentially, Arch, do you think she's a double agent?
Yeah, that's a possibility too. I think there's more going on there, so I'm giving that a big wait and see on that to see that. I feel like they've got her set up for something. I just don't know what that is exactly.
Just to throw in, until Secret Invasion happens, we can't trust anything that happens in the MCU.
You know that's coming, so there's a Skrull running around somewhere probably.
I don't think she's a Skrull, but I do think there's a strong possibility that she could be a double agent and that she still works for the government. And the whole Madripoor power broker thing was something she's just doing as like a case or like something like that, or she's just again double agenting. But
that's why I'm thinking Armor Wars might be a good place for her. Is she could come out as being trying to undercover whatever's behind that. But yeah, you're right. I think a double agent.
No, definitely. I mean, I think there's probably a couple different like places in the MCU where I could see them using Sharon Carter, and I would probably like it. I like Sharon Carter as a character. I was really one of the more stoked people before Falcon and the Winter Soldier came out about her presence in the series. It was a big highlight to me. Agent 13 and everything. Yeah. And she steals the show in like episode 3 or whatever it is of Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Right.
She fights all those guys to like give them time with the Hydra scientist. That was a great episode for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she's gonna have another wrinkle somewhere. It could be anywhere. I'm not sure where it is, but I think she's got something else to say.
So Okay, guys, changing up subjects, getting into different territory. Why don't we get into the Rotten Tomato reviews? I picked out a couple that I think you guys will probably like. David R. mentioned Armor Wars. I'm glad we're talking about Armor Wars. We got a ways to go before we get to that series. But I'm definitely, I mean, some people are a little down on it. I'm pretty excited about it personally. As far as the Rotten Tomato reviews goes, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and shout out a couple ones that I checked out today and just get your comments and kind of see what you think of the reviews, and just, let us know how close you think these people are at with what their take on the film. Basically, as far as the actual film's rating goes, it is a 72% on the tomato meter, 71% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And from September 11th, 2017, I've got Candace Frederick from Real Talk Online, top critic, going to you, Kyle. I don't think the story was nearly as strong as that of The Dark Knight, but it sure was entertaining and surprisingly funny, and sets up the Avengers quite nicely. Gave a rating of a B+.
You forget what other movies came out around this time, and the fact that we're even comparing Iron Man 2 to The Dark Knight. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, don't get me wrong, Iron Man 2 is a good movie, but it's not it's The Dark Knight. I would give Iron Man 2 a solid B to B+ rating. I think overall at the end of the day, like I said, it's not one of the best MCU films, but when you look back at it, it does what it needs to do. It brings us Black Widow. It brings us, and it introduces a lot of concepts later that evolve out later down on the line. And that's another thing that Marvel has done so well. It's not so much that these things feel like they're forced interconnections, but they weave the threads from one film to another in places you don't even think about it going, and then it makes perfect sense once it happens. And I think that's especially when you look at these Phase 1 films, and especially I think Iron Man 2, there's a lot of threads from Iron Man 2 that feed out not only into future Iron Man films and Avengers films, but into other things in the Marvel Universe that you wouldn't even associate with Iron Man 2.
Well, Kyle, that's one thing I wanted to point out to you about Iron Man 2 is that it is kind of busy, but at the same time, they had a lot that they had to set up and connect. So it was a double-edged sword. But anybody else on this Candace Frederick review? Cyber, what do you think?
I mean, the comment about being related or comparing it to The Dark Knight, just what he was saying, I totally, I don't get why they were comparing it to that, because
it's apples to oranges, don't you think?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because Dark Knight, it hands down is the best Batman film I think to date. It is one of my favorite all-time one, with the best Joker in my opinion, top ranking Heath Ledger. And I mean, to compare that to that movie to Iron Man 2, it just does not bode well. Like you were saying, apples and oranges. I mean, yeah, definitely I would give Iron Man 2 a B+, A-. I thought it was that good. I enjoyed it, but I definitely would not compare it to Dark Knight, because Dark Knight to me is, 1,000% better of a film, and just, a better story, and just, it had more creativity to it versus what they did with Iron Man 2, because like we were saying, Iron Man 2 is the beginning of the MCU. This DC movie, The Dark Knight, it had a lot of creation behind it and just really great setup. So, I mean, that film, I would say, would be 1,000 times better than Iron Man 2, but still, yeah, I would say I agree that the B+ is a pretty good grade for the film. I would give it more of an A-, though.
Going to you, Arch. Rumors had been circulating around Iron Man 2 for some time. Rumors of reshoots and studio cuts. Is this what they wanted, you wonder, or is this what they were trying to avoid? This is from Stuart McGurk, who gave the movie a 6 out of 10 rating back in May 2021. What do you think about that, Arch?
I mean, I don't know what I wouldn't know what he means by trying to avoid, because I find this film thoroughly enjoyable from start to finish. So It's not. Here's the thing: the MCU, like throughout its entire history, makes good to great films. Like when you're talking about it's not the best, you're still talking about a pretty darn good film. So it's not like you're watching this, and I'm not going to name any specific films, but it's not one of those you'll watch and you're like, well, none of this shit makes sense. Like, like you're not trying to piece together, well, why did they introduce that? All of it makes sense. All of it's good. They establish all of their characters well. I love a lot of the interactions. I mean, this is just a really solid, enjoyable film. So, I mean, I don't really know what else you'd be asking for. I think the MCU is great for, like, at least giving you that every single time. You can go in and you can enjoy it. It's fine. It's great. And then they have their top tier, wow, that was amazing films. And it's awesome. I think that's why I'm in it.
Kevin, what do you think of the rating, the 6 out of 10? Do you think that that's legitimate?
No, I'd give it a little bit higher personally. I agree with the previous rating, like the B+, I think it is. I think it's a solid sequel, and it expands a lot of the universe and really dives into the character building of Tony and what he has coming forward. So no, I disagree with that ranking. I give it, if he's going to go from 1 to 7, I'd give it like maybe a 7.5, 8, maybe at the highest.
Okay, I think that's pretty fair. Cyber, going back to you, from David Hogan out of the UK, who gave the movie a 4 out of 5. On the positive note, doesn't quite stand up to the original, but comes close. The lead villain in the final showdown leaves this film feeling a little empty. Still more than worth a watch, though.
I mean, I would agree to that to some extent. I don't think Iron Man 2 is worse than Iron Man 1. I think they're about par to each other. I definitely agree that Obadiah Stane was a better villain in the first film than Mickey Rourke was as Whiplash, simply for the fact that we didn't get very much of a comic book accurate Whiplash, and they kind of gave him that the kind of like the revenge aspect. I thought was kind of a downer for the character, because I feel like he should have been more focused on being a villain. Like, he's there to cause havoc and the whole God line and stuff like that, wanting to maim, and I just thought that wasn't, to me, didn't sound like a villain from the comics.
It was too meta.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with that. I think Obadiah Stane was a better villain, but as a whole, both of the films, I think they're both par in how good they were.
Okay. Arch, what do you think about what David Hogan says about the film? He does give it a 4 out of 5.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. I don't know how much more to really clarify it. I mean, all I can really say is I think they pretty much do everything they really want to here. So that's all I really ask. Nothing really stands out to me as they could have done better. I already talked about how I find the backstory of Whiplash as presented here. I get it's not exactly the comics. I'm okay with that. So if somebody isn't, that's fine.
So you find it to be a very consistent film overall.
Yeah, no, I do, and I think they hit their pacing really well. I think it goes from action to character drama really well, and all the character drama moments are not necessarily always funny, but they're interesting, right? Like, you've got classic Tony Stark, a lot of classic Tony Stark moments, being witty and overly sexist in certain ways, and then also funny and condescending to people. And I think all of that really works. You get a lot of great Pepper empowerment moments, and I just think all of it really works. I enjoy every scene, like I said before, so I'm thoroughly satisfied. And that's all.
Without RDJ, I don't think the movie would work at all. You know what I mean? He holds the whole show together without question. Go ahead, Kevin.
I just want to say that I have issues with the original Iron Man. I know it's not shared by a lot of people, but I find the first half of the original Iron Man so much more watchable than the second half. Obadiah Stane is good, but I don't like the lead into it, and I feel that the latter half of the second half of Iron Man, to me, drags out a little too much. The only tension that to me, it's just a generic good guy, bad guy fight. To me, I enjoy the scenes more with Pepper and Agent Coulson more than anything else. I actually prefer Iron Man 2 rewatching it more than Iron Man 1 all the way through, because yes, there's like a first and a second half, and I enjoy both those halves almost equally. So I mean, I agree with that that higher, was it 4 out of 5? I think that's really good, and but I disagree. I kind of go back and forth with it, I guess. I like them both about the same, but I just find this second one a little more rewatchable. And if I'm going to grade it on that, I would give Iron Man 2 a little bit higher rating, personally.
Okay, well, before we get into Batman, the Batman, let me just go ahead really quick and go around and get either give me your 1 through 10 rating, or just let me know where you think this movie fits in the MCU hierarchy.
Arch.
Infinity Saga. Kyle, I'll start with you.
As far as the standalone movie itself, I would say this is a 7.5 to an 8. As far as where this falls within the dynamics of the MCU, I'm going to say this probably falls into the lower half of the MCU films. I put it maybe in that 15 to 20 range, right about there. I think there was, it's one of those things that when you're going from phase 1 into what they've got down later on the road, and it kind of gets knocked down. And I think it's in a way it's become kind of the forgotten phase 1 film. Everybody forgets that it was part of phase 1, but because everybody focuses on the first Iron Man, the first Captain America, the first Thor, and the first Avengers in phase 1, and this kind of gets lost in the mix. Hulk people remember because of just everything that was so weird around it, so it gets a little lost in the mix. But you know what? It's an important film to the structure of the MCU, like all of them are. And again, I think when you have Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in any film, it makes it that much more important and that much more viable for the MCU. So, again, I don't hate any of the MCU films. I love them all. And Iron Man 2, while people consider it lower, it's still a great film.
Arch.
I'll keep this short and sweet. It's a really solid entry. I don't know how to stack it up necessarily, but it's definitely a solid entry. I will give it 3 Avengers out of Hemorrhoid Attack.
Nice. Cyber, what do you think, buddy?
Hemorrhoid Attack? Really? Hemorrhoid Attack? Okay. Anyways.
Hemorrhoid Attack.
Oh, okay. Anyways, I give this a solid 9 out of 10. I definitely think that it has a lot of great features to this film. I think it's just a really well done film. Like everyone has said in the past, they said that this really built on the story from the first film. There's a lot of things that you can dislike about it. There's a lot of things you can love about it. There's a lot of things that you feel that were better done in the first one or worse done in the first one. It all comes down to just your personal preference. So, but for me, it's a 9 out of 10. I feel I would give it a 10 if I felt that the performance, or the story, I should say, not the performance. The performance by Mickey Rourke was amazing. I thought he was excellent in the film. I just didn't care for how they, basically had him play out the character. So otherwise than that, I think the film is a solid 9 out of 10.
I think that's very fair, and I think that honestly, we have to be realistic about the fact that with the MCU, you got to look at like the different times, like these films came out versus Infinity War and Endgame, and where technology was at, and like where special effects were at, and everything like that. Like that stuff is all like varied, and like increases and grows over time and gets better and improved over time. So at that point, you have to kind of use that lens to take into consideration Iron Man 2. Where it was at in 2010 is not the kind of impact it's going to have in 2021. Kevin, what do you think?
My rating would be about 7.5, 8, maybe around the middle of the road total. It's a solid film, and what I find interesting too is there's a little bit of debate of where the Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2 fit in the chronological order. And so Iron Man 2 came out in 2008. So did Incredible Hulk. I'm sorry, the original Iron Man is 2008. Incredible Hulk came out in 2008. Iron Man 2010. But at the end of Incredible Hulk, we get that scene with Tony talking to Thunderbolt Ross, but he hasn't joined the Avengers at the end of Iron Man yet. He hasn't even done it yet in Iron Man 2. When he's thinking about it, Samuel Jackson's character is like saying, well, maybe we don't want you now, and so it's not until the end of Iron Man 2 that you get like the Tony saying, okay, I'm gonna join your boy band, so to speak, and then you get the Incredible Hulk coming in.
That's a good point. All right, well, listen, guys, let's change pace and launch into the DCU fandom for a while. So, territory that we do not trend here on the MCU's Bleeding Edge very often, but a direction that we're happy to go in. Let's jump into the Batman, and let me go ahead and start things right off by dropping the Batman trailer, which I think is literally outstanding, personally. Then again, I'm a sucker for good trailers, so.
From your secret friend. Underneath the bridge. Who? Topper sprung a leak, and the animals I've trapped. Haven't a clue. All become my pet. Let's play a game, just me and you. Any of this mean anything to you?
You're becoming quite a celebrity. Why is he writing to you?
If you are justice, please do not lie. What is the price for your blind eye?
The hell are you supposed to be?
I'm vengeance.
Whoa! This guy's crazy!
You're part of this too. How am I part of it? You'll see.
Okay, if this movie is not freaking disgusting at this point, after seeing that trailer, like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be seriously disappointed because, I don't know, guys. Obviously, Cyber, are you okay?
Yep.
Anyway, of course I want to hear what y'all think about the Batman, but I got to just preface things before we get into your guys' takes that I think that trailer is freaking ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry, but that scene where Robert Pattinson's Batman stomps that dude, like, and double punches him on the ground and is like, I'm vengeance, is like literally like just off the charts as far as I'm concerned. Like, I mean, if you know, I really hope this isn't one of those situations where that's like the best like moment from the film right there, and like I don't believe that that's the case. Kevin, starting with you, the Batman. What do you think about Robert Pattinson as Batman so far?
I absolutely love this casting. When he was cast, the fandom spoke up. oh no, it's Twilight Boy as Batman. Oh, he can't act because of Twilight. Well, I'm going to guess most of those little whiners didn't actually see all the other films like I have that he is in. This kid can act. And I am really excited that he can start this franchise up again. And I love him. But I got even more excited when I saw the car. Because I love how it kind of has a muscle car feel to it. It seems kind of practical. It can kind of stick out, but then not stick out, you know? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love all the past Batmobiles, but, you know, they kind of stuck out like a sore thumb, which they're supposed to, but there's a design about this one that I like. The only red flag that drops that to me that I get from looking at the IMDb, watching the trailer and all that kind of stuff, and I'm a little worried about it, is something that kind of Kyle brought up about the Spider-Man films, the earlier ones, where you try to introduce too many villains, because we have Paul Dano as the Riddler, we have Colin Farrell as Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, and then we've got Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Celine Kyle, and then of course on top of that we've got John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. So I'm curious how they're going to juggle all of this. Maybe that we're just going to get maybe one of the. It seems like from the trailer, Paul Dano as the Riddler is going to be the main kind of focus on this, while the other ones are kind of going to be introduced. But we're not going to get like a Batman Forever / Batman and Robin where you got like 50,000 villains all competing for screen time here. So hopefully they'll juggle that correctly. I'm really excited about this. I love the look, and I'm really excited for Bruce Pattinson, because that kid can act. And if you say he can't act, I will prove you wrong and take you downtown for it.
Don't forget about
It's Robert Pattinson, not Bruce.
Sorry.
Don't forget about Matthew McConaughey potentially being in the film as Two-Face. That's been heavily rumored. It's
okay. I didn't hear that.
Not been verified, but it's been heavily rumored that that's going to transpire. And
I love the fact that Jeffrey Wright is James Gordon. I'm a huge fan.
I wanted one of
of Jeffrey Wright. Yeah.
He's going to be Uatu or whatever, or the Watcher in the What If series, and he's going to be Commissioner Gordon in the Batman, which I think is great too. I love him as an actor. I think he's really great. So moving on over to Cyber, what do you think, Cyber? What are your thoughts on the trailer?
Well, when I first heard the casting, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I wasn't like really looking forward to it. But then this trailer dropped, and it completely changed my mind. I'm a huge Paul Dano fan. I love Paul Dano. I think he's an amazing actor. He has proven himself time and time again. He is an amazing actor, from his Little Miss Sunshine role to Swiss Army to anything else I've seen him in. He's always been amazing, and his pick as the Riddler is a perfection pick for the Riddler, and I'm hands down game for that. As soon as they said that, I was like, oh, I watched this movie. I don't care who else is in it, because I'll watch it for him. Then when they cast Colin Farrell as the Penguin, I like that, because I think Colin Farrell is really fantastic. I'm sorry, I'm not a huge Robert Pattinson fan, and it's not because he can't act. It's just I don't like him. I don't think he's anything great. I think he's overrated. His Tenant role, I thought, was okay. I thought his Lighthouse performance was, mediocre. But his Twilight role, that wasn't that bad either. I don't think it was that bad of a thing. But I think his best role to date was Diggory in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. That's my favorite part, his role so far that I've seen. But at the same time, though, the casting of Paul Dano and Colin Farrell drew me right in. And then the fact, though, I'm not a huge fan of Zoe Kravitz. I don't like the idea of her as Catwoman. I don't see her as Catwoman. She's a pretty face, and that's pretty much it to me. Because, I mean, her role in, like, X-Men First Class, to her performances and anything else I've seen her in, is very just bland to me. And that's just my opinion. It's just bland. So, but overall, when I saw the trailer, though, it totally changed my mind of Pattinson playing Batman. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with the character. I am looking forward to just the whole film in general. And, yeah, I think this is going to be a very amazing film. Also, the fact that it's supposed to be right after he first started being Batman. This
Yeah.
film is supposed to be taking place, so I like that whole idea too. So it's kind of like he's fresh and he's just learning how to be Batman. So we're getting a totally different aspect of Batman versus all the ones we've gotten in the past.
It's Batman Year One. That's the premise of the film, is that it's Batman Year One, and it's supposed to have more of a pay more attention to like the detective side aspect of Batman. Like that's supposed to be the premise. Arch, what are your thoughts on the trailer? Robert Pattinson as Batman. I think he looks great in the Batman suit. I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, no, I think the look is great. The trailer is really, really awesome. Actually, the vibe of it's perfect. I think it's fantastic. Just the opening sets the right tone with the ripping of the duct tape, and then you realize he's like taping up this guy's face. It's pretty brutal. Like that's great stuff. All the casting is solid. I'll confess I have not been a huge Robert Pattinson fan. I just didn't know much about him. But I think I'm going to plug Sakari here real quick. I think one of the great parts about the site is there's a couple people on there who are really big Robert Pattinson fans, and I actually sort of challenge isn't the right word, but I asked them for recommendations on movies I could watch because I wasn't going to just watch his whole portfolio. I was like, give me like a couple of films to go watch. So I did, and actually I enjoyed them. I enjoyed him. It changed me at least a little bit from
Which ones did you watch out of curiosity?
You're gonna get me here. There's one where he winds up the finale's in like a theme park or something, like a little fair amusement park. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that sound familiar? To anybody? He's like running away. He's kind of he robs a bunch of stuff. He's kind of a bad dude, and then he winds up and there's like a shootout on like a fair amusement park ride or something like that towards the end. That was kind of the primary one I watched. But anyway, I really enjoyed his performance. Or at least, I felt very comfortable with it. I'm not going to say like I'm a huge Robert Pattinson fan, but I was very comfortable with it. So I thought that was fine. I have kind of a thing here though, and this is more of a personal thing in terms of like how I view films like this. And I felt the same way with The Amazing Spider-Man. I felt the same way probably with Incredible Hulk. There's probably some others too. Like I kind of am not a big fan of like reboots and just starting over again. Like I felt like maybe I would like to see this as like maybe an older Batman perhaps, and then I could like mind meld this into sort of canon with the Nolan verse or something like that. I'm not saying they had to do that, but I'm kind of over with 3 films and then starting over with another one because we had Batman Begins not all that long back, and then this is sort of another start. I just kind of feel like I've seen this sort of a little bit, and
we got to get our Dark Knight. That's kind of where I hope Batfleck was going. The older Batman.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. So we just had Batfleck in between, and then of course we've got the other ones that were older before that. I'm kind of just a teeny tiny bit Batmaned out, just a little bit. That's not to take anything away because it does look great, and to everybody that's excited, be excited. I don't want to take any of that away from you. I just when The Amazing Spider-Man came out, I really went into that film just for the specific reason that I was like, Spider-Man 3 wasn't unsalvageable. Like you could do a Spider-Man 4 and keep this kind of thing going, but we're gonna start over again, and I have to watch another origin story, and I just didn't want to do that, so I never could get myself there into that film. And I sort of feel that way about this, where I'm like, I can't fully really get on board. I just wish like it'd be like a longer series and we don't have to start over again, if that makes sense. But it does look great. I'm not going to take that away. It looks fantastic.
Cyber.
Well, just like you were saying, Arch, that's why with Spider-Man Homecoming, that's why they didn't have the whole origin story, because they wanted to get past that. That's why they decided when this was bringing Spider-Man into the Sony Marvel verse, they decided not to do the origin story. So that's why Spider-Man Homecoming was how it was.
Absolutely.
Like he already was established. He was already Spider-Man, just now he's like working on that's what I feel what's going on with this Batman movie is. It's supposed to be his year 1, like Jeff was saying. So I think this is not really an origin story. It's more of like his progress of becoming the Dark Knight. So I think it's a little different. So, I get where you're coming from and all that stuff. And, like, I agree. Like, why do they keep rebooting things and just keep redoing the origin story all the time? That can get monotonous sometimes. Yes, I get it. But this one I don't think is going to be like that. I think it's going to be a little different. So, who knows what they'll do with it, but I think it's a different step in a different direction, not like what they did, where they did the original Batman in '89 with Michael Keaton, and then they did Batman Begins with Christian Bale in 2005. So I think they're doing a little different thing there, in that, at least in that aspect,
And it's actually it's Batman Year 2. Just to be clear, I want to make sure that
That's
I make that point. It's his second year as Batman. Kyle, go ahead, man.
Oh, Warner Brothers, you make something cool and then you submarine it before it even begins. So here is the actual scoop on Batman. First of all, I love this trailer. This trailer is phenomenal. I love the cast in this film. I was not quite sold on Pattinson. I thought he would be a great Bruce Wayne. I wasn't sure about his Batman, but seeing this trailer really sold me on his Batman. But DC and Warner Brothers, in their infinite wisdom, has decided to put versions of Batman everywhere across the DC movie universe, because we have Flashpoint coming, which is going to have Michael Keaton's as Batman in this, possibly Ben Affleck as Batman, maybe even another version of Batman. So how have the DC decided to solve their Batman problem? This Batman movie takes place on Earth 2. That has been officially announced by DC and Warner Brothers, that this is on a separate Earth. It's part of the multiverse.
Hold on. Wasn't that a TV show starring Clancy back in the 90s?
Yeah. And they continue to mess around with the Batman franchise. As we know, we have a casting for Batgirl, which, is not the traditional look for Batgirl, but a lot of people were thinking, oh, well, if they're going to tie it into this Batman film like they're talking about, then it's Jeffrey Wright's daughter, everything works out well. Well, now they're saying, oh, no, J.K. Simmons will be playing Commissioner Gordon in the Batgirl movie. So the DC has their wire and Warner have their wires crossed in so many paths. You're going to have to go on this film kind of like you went into the Nolan films. It's its own standalone thing. Don't treat it as try to make it canon into anything else that's going on. Make it its own Batman film. That's the only way you're going to be able to approach this, because this film is not going to tie in with anything going on in the DC universe. It's its own thing. They are doing the HBO Max show that will tie into this called Gotham. And in this whole process, Warner Brothers has managed to make angry the star of this film, as Robert Pattinson is said to be irate over the fact that now there's all these other Batmans in existence while he's trying to be the character.
Kyle, wasn't there already a Gotham TV show?
There was already a Gotham TV show, but they're doing a new one that is going to be on HBO Max to tie in with this Matt Reeves universe.
That was Cyber's, Cyber, if you could hear me, brother, Cyber's, his iPad or whatever battery dies and he just drops off. He never lets us know or warns us or anything. So here he is. Let me bring him back. Let me resurrect him. I'm resurrecting you, Cyber.
So yes, Warner and DC strike again, and you wonder why they can't seem to get their stuff together like Marvel manages to. This is why, because
I honestly, Kyle, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I feel like where things are at with the state of the DCU universe cinematically is part of the reason why they're willing to not synchronize this franchise with the DCU. If the whole Justice League deal and that roster was set and that was all MCU'd out, where people trusted it and were confident with it and whatnot, and we knew what to expect and everything, and and all that, at that point, I feel like there'd be more pressure at that point to connect the Batman character with the DCU.
But here's what you're doing by doing this, and we understand as fans, and we understand. But the common fan out there who's just gonna, it's a Batman movie, I'm gonna go see a Batman movie, is gonna be questioning where are these other characters? Where is this? They're not gonna understand the concept of the multiverse and all that stuff. Now, maybe by the time Phase 4 of the MCU is done, everybody's going to have a much better understanding of what a multiverse means. But in the meantime, Warner can't stop stepping on their own toes, and that's all, because they have this what is looking like an amazing movie, which I am so excited because we are going to get really played up. I think for the first time, the detective side of Batman, something that has been rarely played up in most of the films, and I'm really looking forward to that aspect. I think Matt Reeves is going to have a phenomenal Batman film here. I just hope that Warner doesn't get this lost in the land of confusion because of what else they've got going on within the DC universe and confuse the hell out of the average fan who just wants to see a Batman film.
I think that's a good point, because I think people need to realize that there's a double-edged sword type of dichotomy with the multiverse. Whether it's the MCU or the DCU, you can overplay that hand if you don't handle that whole thing carefully. That's just my take on it. Like, I think that's something that has to be very gently dealt with as far as like how they handle the multiverse, because if you overdo it too much, it becomes like Kyle talks about Iron Man 2 being too complicated with the characters or the story or whatever. That's what you end up with the multiverse. Like, it becomes too complicated to where the everyday fan is not able to enjoy the films or like the properties. And I mean, right now I feel like I'm happy with where things are going with the MCU personally with the multiverse. I like the angle. The fact that they have, I'm not trying to throw things off or throw a curveball, but the fact that they've confirmed that the What If series is going to be like synchronized with the actual MCU. Like it's actually going to be like shared time or whatever, like real time, like with the MCU. I feel like that's actually like a major game changer, in terms of all of us that are going to be reviewing the What If series, here pretty soon. Kyle, Kevin, like we're going to be in that role here, shortly. And I just want to point out to everybody out there that you should definitely make sure that you check out the True Believers, MCU and Marvel podcast, because I've been on there and these guys are professionals. They don't play around. So, but anyways, as far as the Batman goes, going back over in your direction, Kyle, what are your thoughts on looking at it from a fan standpoint at the roster, at the all the characters, all the villains? What's the upside there? Like, I mean, do you see an upside?
Yeah, there's an upside there. The movie looks, if you base it off the trailer, the movie looks phenomenal. I think with Matt Reeves, he kind of knows what he's doing and going into this. And I think while you have a lot of big name actors here, he's setting up a bigger world. And I think he's planning for this to be, he at least is planning for this to be a multiple film franchise. There's so much up in the air with Warner Brothers, because let's not forget, they've also been sold. And they have the pending sale to the Discovery Channel guys, and we don't know what approach they're going to want to take with things. And are they in for this property? It's just that everything is so up in the air with everything Warner Brothers right now. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. But I think this film is going to be. I'm really confident that this is going to be a very good Batman film. And like I said, give us a Batman that we haven't really. It's going to give us aspects of Christopher Nolan. It's going to probably give us a little bit of aspects of Tim Burton, and it's going to give us the detective side of Batman, which I'm really excited about. I think it's going to be one of the more balanced versions of Batman that we've seen. And like I said, I think Matt Reeves has a strategy for what he wants to do with this. It's just whether or not he gets to execute it.
Well, I think based on the current environment we're at with the pandemic and everything and whatnot, it'll be a situation with Warner Brothers in this film because of their situation and just because of the environment. Outside, I feel like it'll be how this movie plays out. How successful it is will determine whether or not there's a sequel. Kind of like how I think that like Dune is going to unfold. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, like in a normal environment, in a healthy film environment, where there's no pandemic or whatever, they already would be working on the second Dune film right now. It'd already be in production right now. But yet they're halting right now. Now, again, I'm not trying to go curveball here, but I'm just pointing that out as a memento, I guess, of the current times that we're in with the film market and with theaters and everything in the pandemic. I feel like normally this would be a series. Arch, what do you think, man? What do you think about the upside of the Batman film?
I think it looks like they're off to a really good start with it. I kind of like the idea. I don't know what all they're doing with all of these, with all of the villains necessarily in this film, but it looks like they've got a really good handle on this one, and this probably bodes well to things carrying on and happening in the future. I mean, Batman Begins started with a couple of different characters. You didn't really see Scarecrow, become a major part of this series, but you did see him carry on a bit, and I think you might see more of that carrying on factor through this series. So, maybe Catwoman is just a little bit of this role, but she becomes more later. Maybe see, like Penguin has a certain political role in this one, and he becomes more of a villain later. I don't know exactly where they're going with it, but I think they're setting up a robust world more than an overly complicated one, which is a good thing.
I feel like that they really sell the Riddler at the end of that trailer with Paul Dano. Like he's just outstanding. But Kevin, what are your thoughts? What do you feel like is the upside of this Batman film, taking into consideration everything that we've already talked about?
I think it really depends on the character development when we see this film and how people were going to react to them. And, I become a big fan of Colin Farrell. He's done a lot of films that people haven't seen that I have seen. And so I'm really curious where he's going to take that role. But I think it really depends on the fan reactions and what we're going to see. I mean, we got a good trailer. It feels good. It feels like, they're they're setting things up in the right direction. But we also have to like Bruce Wayne too. We have to like that side of the Batman coin, so to speak. We don't get much of that in that trailer, so we'll see.
So, Cyber, to round things out, what are your upsides with this film? What do you think? What do you, or even downsides? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean, there's many things that can happen. It could be the same scenario as like when they decided to reboot back in 2005. It could be a huge success or it can't, And I've recently saw a couple articles within the last couple months of the reason why this Batman is in another Earth. And that's because Warner Brothers is keeping it open for Ben Affleck to come back as Batman from the Batman that he played in the Justice League and Batman vs. Superman and so forth. That's the reason why they decided to put him on Earth 2, because they wanted to keep it open, because originally this Batman was supposed to be the Ben Affleck Batman film, but they went all full circle because, Ben Affleck decided he didn't want to do what they wanted to do. So that's what they recently talked about, and that's the reason why this one is on Earth 2. Secondly, the chronological order, I just want to get this out there. The chronological order about Iron Man 1 and 2, as we were talking about earlier, both Iron Man 1 and 2 are supposed to be simultaneously across each other. They're supposed to be within the same time frame. So when you're watching the MCU, if you go on Disney+, they will have Iron Man 1 and 2 together before you see any of the other films. So actually, it's technically supposed to watch Iron Man 1 and 2 and then Incredible Hulk, because that's how it plays out. Like you were saying with that end credit scene in the Incredible Hulk, that's actually how the time frame is supposed to be happening. They didn't really, when they first released those films, they didn't really give that they didn't tell people about that. It was later on that you finally figured it out, but that's how it's supposed to be actually played out. But getting back to the Batman, like I was saying, I think that this is going to play out. It can be either good or bad, like I was saying before. It could either be a success or not. It all depends on the fanfare. Really does. I mean, if anything, it has to do with the pandemic, if that does, change anything for it for when it finally comes out, which it's now been pushed to next year anyways. So, by that time, probably theaters will be back up on their feet, hopefully. So I don't know how that's going to play out, if it's going to be one of those hits like how this year is going, with a lot of the films hitting around 50 to 70 million their opening weekend. I don't know how that's going to play out for this film, but with the cast they have, with how it looks in the trailer, I think this is going to be a huge hit, because a lot of people have been waiting to see another, or at least more Batman, since the last time we saw Batman, which was in 2017. So, I mean, it's going to be 5 years since we saw the last Batman film. So, I feel it's going to have its fandoms. A lot of people are going to want to go see it. I think it's going to be probably decently hit, especially because, so many people, there are a lot of Robert Pattinson fans. And so, I mean, they like his work in all the films he's done over the last couple of years as well. And so I think that all in all, this is probably going to have a huge upswing, especially if it keeps its date for when it's released next year and it doesn't get pushed back, or even if it gets pushed up, that would be a good thing for it too. I think that it will be very successful.
And I would agree. I definitely think that Cyber makes a good point as far as the timing goes. It doesn't come out until March 4th, 2022. I feel like there's going to be a desire to see Batman at that point. But then again, as you guys have already discussed on the panel, we're going to get a lot of different Batman from different directions in the next couple of years. We're going to get Michael Keaton Batman. I heard we're going to get Ben Affleck Batman guaranteed. That's what I'd heard that a couple days ago, that we're going to have Ben Affleck back as Batman. Does anybody else want to jump in here or throw in any 2 cents here on this Batman film?
I just wanted to officially answer the question from earlier that Good Time was the Robert Pattinson film that I most recall. If anybody's seen that one, it's a pretty good film. I'd check it out. It's a little smaller film, but pretty enjoyable.
I recommend Cosmopolis. He kind of plays a Bruce Wayne rich guy who is agoraphobic, and he spends a lot of his time in meetings in his fancy limousine. That was a good one. And also, I liked Remember Me as well, where it ends with 9/11.
Anybody else?
I think the big issue with Batman is it's waiting for the film now. I'm guessing we'll get some more trailers as we get closer to the end of the year, but it's waiting for the film now. The answer to the Affleck question, there's a lot of rumors that he's at least going to make an appearance as Batman in the Flashpoint film that they're filming currently, because Batman plays such a key part in the Flashpoint film. I think the Flashpoint film is what we got to watch for whatever's going to happen with the future of the DC universe. But that's a whole other massive discussion at another time. But like I said, I think this is going to. I'm personally very excited for this film. This trailer really went from I wasn't sure to I'm all in on this. So I think this trailer has done a great job of selling this film and getting people on board with it.
Me too. I agree with you on that, Kyle. That's definitely how I feel about it. I feel like that trailer sold me completely. Like, at first I was very speculative. I didn't know what to think because, look, I mean, let's be honest here. There's a better chance of, like, me and Arch dropping acid together than there is me watching Twilight films or whatever. Like, it's not going to happen. So, like, I mean, at that point, look, I'm sold on Robert Pattinson as Batman. He looks damn good in the freaking outfit, man. Like, he looks like Batman to me. And he's beating ass and everything and whatnot in the trailer, like kicking some dude's ass, and I'm vengeance and everything. Shit looks authentic to me, man. But then again, like I said, we'll have to see how it plays out. I don't know if I agree with Cyber because I haven't done the research. I don't know the background of Zoe Kravitz. I don't know how authentic or well she's going to be able to play Selena Kyle. I think that's a definite wild card because I think that done well and done the right way, the Catwoman role, if it's done by like somebody like Michelle Pfeiffer, can be really successful and really pivotal and like impactful on screen. I think that you guys have already mentioned the fact that the cast itself, the villains, I mean, you got Colin Farrell playing the Penguin. That could be really great. Like, I mean, who knows? We only saw 3 seconds of him as the Penguin in the trailer, so there's a lot, yet for us to see. But anyways, folks, we're going to go ahead and call it a night at this point. That was a good discussion, very enjoyable. Why don't we go ahead and I'll pass off to starting off with you and our newest guests, Kyle and Kevin. You guys want to, again, just, shout out the podcast, the network.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, well, I took it at the top. You want to take it at the close?
Oh, sure. Yes. First of all, yes, please check out the Fandom Podcast Network. Our master feed is at fpnet.podbean.com. We have several great shows on there. Kyle covered those as well, of course, including the True Believers MCU podcast, which we will be diving deep into what if, and soon we're going to be starting our chronological rewatch of the MCU, which will be a lot of fun to do. And you can, of course, reach me on Facebook under Kevin Reitzel, or on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
Of course, you can find me on Facebook under Kyle Wagner, or you can find me on Twitter at AKyleW, or on Instagram at AKyleFandom, and of course everywhere at the Fandom Podcast Network. Once again, fpnet.podbean.com.
Cyber, do you want to take a minute and kind of just point out some of your personal content creation that you do on your own?
Well, of course, you all guys know who I am. You know, I'm Cyberneticshark, the co-host of the MC Bleeding Edge, here. Anyways, but yeah, check me out I'm also on Rizzle along with Jeff. We do the Rizzle Content World. We're the Rizzle Nation, where it's very similar to TikTok, where we do little videos, minute long, stuff like that. We're also on TikTok. We're on YouTube. We're on everywhere, pretty much. You can find us on many podcast areas, Anchor, etc., etc. So, everything. So, yeah, if you just type in Cyberneticshark in any place, pretty much you'll find me. If you want to look at my solo content, or if you want to look at my collaborations with the MCU's Bleeding Edge, you can check them out all in those places. It's always there for you to watch. So come check us out.
Yeah, and you know what? If you want to come on Rizzle, there's a lot of drama on there right now because all the crybaby snowflake people are flipping out because I one night I was having a couple drinks and I happened to notice that some guy made a video on Rizzle singing a song and he sounded stupid as fuck. So I told him that. I sent him a video and I was like, dude, you fucking suck. You know what I mean? You can't sing, bro. And people on there are all flipping out and their feelings were all hurt and everything. And I'm like, hey, what do you want me to say? The guy sucks. I don't know what to tell you, but what can you do? Arch, sakar.freeforums.net. What do you got to say, man?
That's it. Check it out. We've got a lot of YouTube videos that we are posting right now, reviews, MCU. You were on the MCU Phase 4 breakdown and discussion. You contributed a lot to that, so that's coming out as we speak. We just did a 5-part series on DC that's been out pretty recently. We did Loki reviews, WandaVision reviews, Falcon and Winter Soldier reviews. Check all that out. And the best way to get to it, I would say, is to just check us out on sakar.freeforums.net. Be a member, and you're welcome to come on and chat with us in a format very similar to this with a group of people who just love being fans. So we hope to see you there.
Yeah, or you can seriously test your nuts and get on the Podcast of Champions real quick and be like, "What's up?" Like I do all the time on Saturdays. Throw down with the real bad boys. But no, look, sakar.freeforums.net is a cool site. I like it on there. It's really good people on there, good chemistry, good atmosphere. I'm not huge into the fandom, so I don't get too, intrinsical when it comes to Star Trek and stuff like that and everything and whatnot. But I enjoy the friendships and the people on there and whatnot. And as far as the MCU's Bleeding Edge goes, we are very proud and very pleased at the content that we make. Of course, you may disagree. And if you do, you can always go to the MCU's bleedingedge.org, lowercase, all lowercase, no punctuations, and let us know that we suck if you want to. That's fine. But if you don't think that and you think that we're great and you like Arch and you like Kyle and you thought Kevin and Kyle were great on here and we're doing an okay job, then you should let us know about that. Follow the podcast through Anchor or any podcast distribution platform out there that you can find. If we're not on it, please let me know so I can put us on there. The YouTube channel is the MCU's Bleeding Edge. The Twitch, the Facebook Live, the Facebook, the Twitter, everything is the MCU's Bleeding Edge. The TikTok, baby, all of it is the MCU's Bleeding Edge. It's that simple. So just look and you'll find us. We're not hard. If you throw a javelin out there into the unknown, you will find the MCU's Bleeding Edge at some point. So thank you very much, Cyber, for being my co-host and dealing with my pain in the ass, potential, my possible shortcomings from time to time.
Yeah, pain in the ass.
It's good having you again, Arch. Podcast of Champions, baby. Kevin and Kyle, You guys were great. It was great.
Thank
to
you,
see
sir.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Please do not forget me and Cyber and Art when it gets time to do What If.
Absolutely. We'll keep you
fun.
Keep everybody together.
We want to participate. We want to collaborate, man.
We will get that. We got 10 episodes. We got plenty to cover.
Oh man, that's a lot of episodes. All right, folks. This is the MCU's Bleeding Edge. This is Jeff for Cyber and for Perry. We still love you, Perry. We're out.